My name is John J. Neira. I was born Juan Jose Neira. I am currently 68 years old, and I was born in a small town outside of a beautiful city called La Coruña, which is in the northwest of Spain, right above Portugal. My goodness, the town I spent my first 8 years in, it wasn't even more of a town. It was kind of just a very rural type of setting, mostly farmers. Okay, you saw a lot of cows and goats and oxen running around like that, and that's how I grew up like that. I grew up pretty much running around outside, playing with my friends and playing with the animals. The family's motivation for going to America basically was because everybody wanted to go to America. Okay, that's where the land of opportunity was, and that's where my dad and wanted my family to go. For me, it was like a joyride. We spent like anywhere from, I can't think exactly, 8, 9, 10 days on a ship, basically crossing the ocean. And frankly, half the people, half the time, were getting sick, whether outside or in their cabins. And I'm running around like a nut, enjoying the heck out of myself. I mean, I actually celebrated my 8th birthday on the ship and got to sit at the captain's table. That was pretty cool. We came in to New York Harbor and went right by the Statue of Liberty, Lady Liberty. And I remember some of the older folks were all, it was a nice, July weather. We're all outside on the deck, and some of the old folks are crying and stuff, and I'm just like, hey, what are they crying about? What's the big deal? What's the big deal? And I didn't realize till much, much later that I realized they were crying out of joy. Okay, whatever the reason for leaving, they were in the country and they were being welcomed by Lady Liberty. And I was just like waving back, hey, how are you? When I got there, we moved to Manhattan, and frankly, I didn't speak a word of English. And the first thing they put me into grammar school. So I mean, grammar school is grammar school, but these were like going from a private government school to like, well, actually nuns. Maybe not that much difference. I learned English in about 2, 3 months, do or die, do or die. And I learned it so well that the following year, when we had foreign students come in, the nuns actually had me teaching them English. Figure that one out. Anyway, so that went on for a while. So I had very enjoyable grammar school years and family years and meeting new people in Manhattan. Talk about the big city mentality. I'm coming from a small fishing village. So the transition was a little rough, but I was very easy to make friends. Okay, and I did, and that made the world of difference. I mean, it almost all of a sudden, I come from this little town where I can walk to the ocean, but I'm in Manhattan now. It's like, wow, there's no end to this place. So I think the transition was, in both cases, was a little harder with the language, but as far as transitioning into a whole new world was a big plus. It was walking into like a storybook in a way. I didn't really discover any discrimination, and frankly, I think, I hate to say this, but frankly, I think it was partially because of how I looked. I was like a little white boy with blonde hair. I had blonde hair, so I mean, some people actually thought I could have been Irish or German or something. So I don't know what role that played, but it might have in that people didn't peg you, as they do peg you by your looks. I did see discrimination when I was in grammar school, and they decided for the first time to bust from the Bronx some African American and Puerto Rican students. And even though we were a Catholic school, there was a lot of murmuring and whispering, how come we're getting them? What are they coming down here for? Whatever. And I got to tell you, some of these people became some of my best friends. We found out they were no different from what we were. And frankly, I think that on the discrimination part, they were probably more afraid to be there than we were to have them. You know what I'm saying? So I did not experience it, but I saw it firsthand. Being a first generation American, there was a certain amount of pride, okay, in being an immigrant. and usually when I go, we're hanging out with people or at a party or something, and they're like, we're third generation. I go, or second generation, and second, oh, second generation. I go, hey man, this is first generation over here. So it's almost like a sense of pride that I have for being an immigrant, first class, an immigrant first class, but not having had to endure the hardships, okay, of a lot of those immigrants that came from all over the world, and some of them just horrible situations. So I never got that, but through my surroundings, I got to see through them some of the tough times that they were going through. Okay. And the language factor, and, working a couple of jobs, and this and that. And I imagine that that's probably what it was like. I think my folks went through it a little bit more. So, it kind of worked out that way, that in a way, even though I wasn't, I was. So I can say I've experienced that in a way. And part of that gives me a feeling for other first generation Americans having an extremely difficult time getting in the country and gelling in the country, that I kind of pretty much eased in. Not too bad.
And that was the end of the interview with my father. I was very interested to gain a deeper level of understanding of his coming to the States as a boy and how being a first-generation immigrant impacted his life in America. He mentioned how his father wanted to move the family into the country because it was the land of opportunity, and that is where everyone wanted to go. As stated in Chapter 2 of our class reading, American Culture Studies, An Introduction to an American Culture, the model of the melting pot assumed that everyone could better themselves in American society, despite any ethnic distinctiveness, and improve their position through economic opportunity. This was the assumption, yet most immigrants did not yet know how much discrimination was circulating through America in reaction to the arrival of people from different countries. This type of behavior was focused on heavily in the documentary Forgotten Ellis Island, which captured the poor treatment of immigrants almost immediately upon arrival in the U.S. It was quite compelling to learn that my father's ethnicity and resulting physical appearance did not yield much personal discrimination towards him at any point in life. He further explained that even though he did not have to deal with this firsthand, he was able to experience it by observing his friends around him that immigrated from different parts of the world and faced much more difficult circumstances. It is very important to remember this part of history, as it has shaped and continues to shape the country that we call home.